नहीं सर
ठीक है, मैं अब लिंक
हाँ डाल दो।
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guest and esteemed participant. A warm, hearty welcome to the Roundtable on Artificial Intelligence in Telecom. To begin with, let me invite our distinguished panelists to the dais. Please welcome Mr. Sandeep Gayatra, CEO, American Tower Corporation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Mr. Ajay Jain, Executive Vice President, Networks, Bharti Airtel. Ms. Kaul Chakrabarti, Chief Technology Officer, STL Global Services. Mr. Puneet Chopra, Telecom CTO, HPE India. Dr. Sukhdeep Singh Rao, Executive Director, CRI Digital. Request to have a group photograph, please. Yes. Yes, yes.
You have to start?
Yes, you have to start. Thank you, everyone. To set the tone for today's discussion, let's begin with the welcome remarks. I would like to invite Dr. Sukhdeep Singh Rao, Executive Director, CRI Digital, to share his insights and welcome each one of you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to today's gathering in the form of a roundtable on artificial intelligence in the telecom sector. Artificial intelligence is no longer a concept to be discussed or an idea to be deliberated upon. It is getting deployed across the sectors around the world in different industries, and there is a different level of penetration that we see when we see different sectors of industries. Telecom is one industry where the adoption or the penetration of artificial intelligence is one of the highest in the world. And there are reasons for it, and the purpose of this roundtable discussion deals with some of those areas. Specific to India, it is important to note that the telecom industry in India is the second largest in the world, with a subscriber base of 1.09 billion as of March 2024. India has an overall tele-density of approximately 86%, of which tele-density in the rural market, which is slightly untapped, stands at around 60%, while the tele-density of urban markets is 133.7%. It is important to note that there are multiple aspects, multiple interfaces, multiple where the telecom industry has already deployed artificial intelligence in advanced form. Coming back to India and the Indian telecom industry, the telecom sector is the fourth largest sector in India in terms of FDI inflows, contributing to 6% of total FDI inflow, and contributes directly to 2.2 million employment and indirect to 1.8 million jobs. Between 2014 and 2021, the FDI inflows in the telecom sector have grown by 150% to 20.8 billion from 8.3 billion during 2002-2014. 100% FDI has already been allowed in this sector. There are multiple growth drivers. There are PLI schemes under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. There are telecom sector reforms. There is Bharat Net project. In terms of consumption of data. India is one of the highest consumers of data per day. And there is also Prime Minister's Wi-Fi access network interface called PM Vani, which has been launched to drive growth of this sector. Now coming back to artificial intelligence, there are three major areas where artificial intelligence is making a huge difference in the telecom industry. The first one is obviously operations. Approximately 60 to 70% of total cost of any telecom operator is coming from operations. And the deployment of artificial intelligence in multiple aspects of telecom operations management and services is a big driver towards EBITDA of any telecom operator. The second is in terms of capturing customer insights, involving customer engagement, employee engagement, and then using those analytics in an automated fashion to drive policies, to create products, to provide services. All of that is already done and is moving at a fast pace in terms of the competitiveness that the telecom industry provides. The third aspect is about the marketing aspect in terms of designing products, in terms of designing services, in terms of designing futuristic applications for consumers, which come directly as an output, which is analyzed, the analysis which is done using AI of different aspects of customer engagement. So cutting it short, we have a very esteemed set of panelists here to talk about different aspects. What I will do is I will introduce the speakers one by one, and I will then invite them to make their initial statements, and then we will have a round of discussion, and then the later part of it, I'll open it for a discussion with the audience as well. So I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Ajay Jain, who is currently Executive Vice President, Networks, Bharti Airtel. Ajay is a seasoned technology leader with approximately 28 years of experience in telecom industry and research. He is well known for his engineering expertise and pragmatic approach. He's held senior roles at Vodafone India, Qualcomm, and Motorola, and he brings a wealth of management experience to his current position at Airtel, where he spearheads digitization efforts, transforming network management across mobility, broadband, and enterprise sectors. May I invite Mr. Ajay Jain to make his presentation and give us his opening remarks. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sujit, for introducing. Just start the context, before we jump into AI, it will be appropriate to talk about, what technology disruptions are happening all around us, which is driving us to take a different view. A major change, which we are witnessing across the industry is cloudification. Cloud deployments, any new deployments, which you're seeing in the networks, whether it is for my network side of it, whether it is on the business side of it, is happening on the cloud, which is driving a big change. More important is moving from hardware to software. Everything is moving from software-defined radios, software-defined applications, NFVs. All of these elements are ensuring that more and more it's all about software enablement, and that's driving a big change in the way in which we run and manage our networks. Distribution networks, IoT, 5G has already brought about the way in which we want to perceive our networks. It's no longer about humans consuming telecom, it's also about machines talking to each other through, and the networks have become APIs, all the networks have started to integrate and become a larger ecosystem. That's where the communication models have changed. Big data, that's where a lot of the AI ML, content will start to get consumed, because now we have a plethora of data, both from a network side of it and the consumer side of it, which we want to exploit and create new use cases, and also drive experiences. And most of the content has become very rich, from the older ways in which people were wanting to consume content. Now there is a plethora of content which are available and which are getting consumed. It is starting from that, element that, the entire revolution is starting to happen. So, if we sum it up, all of these technology disruptions are driving us to adopt new ways of working in AI, and we look into, how AI will help us to move in that direction. What are the changing expectations from the industry, from us as a consumer, as well as the provider of the services? We are all moving from network-centric to service-centric, which means that no longer it is about network. It is all about service experience. It's all about individual service experience. No longer it is generic experiences across the board. As a network and as a consumer, we all want zero tolerance. We want networks to be available all the times, everywhere, because that's how we consume the services. If networks have become complex, and if you're depending on human to manage it, it will no longer be possible. That's where the closed loop automation comes in, to ensure that, and we run these networks, the network should be self-managed, machine should be able to analyze the issues, identify issues, and fix the issues. And this is going in all domains from a network standpoint. All of the networks as of now are moving from reactive to proactive to predictive. That's where predictive analytics plays a part. And you will see that how AI helping is moving in that domain. No longer it's all about, we have a fault and we solve it, We have to identify what could be the potential faults and how do we fix it through closed loop. Okay, that's how the networks of the future will be. We have a concept of dark mode, which means that less humans, machines taking most of the decisions, and that's how things need to work. And from an enterprise standpoint, it's all about zero tolerance networks. From end-to-end, because IoT end-to-ends are growing very, very rapidly, In India as well, if you look into the market, it's already about 20 plus billion market and growing at a very healthy CAGR. So end-to-end is growing very, very rapidly. And these are large devices which need to get managed. We need to look into how these devices can be managed. It will not be simply possible if we don't have proper systems to manage all of this. With this as a background, let me deep dive into how AI and what AI is doing for all of us. Let's look into AI as a business driver. AI has both opportunities and challenges as well, right? Because to adopt AI, everybody wants to use it, but there are obviously challenges. Let's look into the opportunity side of it. As a business side of it, huge opportunities, AI is offering us, From a business standpoint, we should be able to identify customer behaviors, Customer behaviors at all touch points, bringing him omni-channel experience. So whether he is talking to us through one channel, whether it's a digital channel, whether it's a call center, whichever channel, he is, we should be able to put together all that information inside and be able to offer him a common experience. What all his services are, what all services, we are offering to him, what all services we are consuming, we should be all able to put it together so that, we are able to offer him customized solutions. It's no longer about generic solutions, which are offered to everybody. Everybody is now looking for customized solutions, If you go to Amazon website, it offers you specific solutions, which is your interest. That is what will increase the stickiness that would also increase your brand loyalty as well. More important is churn. Churn is a very, very big subject in telecom. You know, we want all customers to be happy. How do we identify what are the customer experiences at all touch points, both on the business side of it as well as on the network side of it? Identify proactively what issues he has facing, fix them so that he's a happy customer. It's a big, big work which is there in the telecom industry. I'm sure this is there for all industries as well. Looking into the challenges side of it, if you want to put AI at play, the most important thing which everybody needs to worry about is ROI. If you do the investments, what's the return of investments which you are going to get? It's not a very direct correlation logic which you get out of it. So there is a significant amount of investments required. Business cases needs to be validated so that whatever investments which we are doing, there's a proper return cycle which is there. There are concerns based on data privacy. If you are getting a lot of these insights from the consumer, there's a fine line of data privacy, and that needs to get addressed. Consumers should not feel that somebody is infringing on their insights, infringing on their personalized information. So we have to have a very fine balance between what we want to monitor and how we want to consume that network information. And consumers' demands are ever growing, So if we have to be one step above it, we need to identify those demands. AI probably will help us to bridge that gap between the requirements, expectations, and the service we deliver. And how do we quickly roll out those services? So that's the business driver, as we see from a telecom perspective. Moving from business to network. Okay, that's where large part of the work which we are doing, stems from here. If you look into, AI is all over. From network planning to operations, which we just heard, optimization experience, So if we look into all the areas of our operations, AI is there. Whether it is smart planning, OpEx, as we just heard, is a very, very important element of it. How do we create smart networks? How do we plan smartly? How do we optimize the network smartly so that we are able to serve large part of the customers and give them the requisite experience? So that's all about smart planning. We heard a big amount of cost, which is there from an operations standpoint. AI plays a very significant role. If we can do early detection of the faults, if we can automate those stuff, if we can automate the networks,
difference. However, having said that, yes, I've been a part of the industry from the days when it was a fledgling industry where we said, couple of tens of base stations were a big thing to millions, which is today. So going from 2G wherever we are today at 5G and starting to already actively talk about 6G. But back to the topic of AI in our industry. AI, rightfully so, is generating and has generated a lot of excitement, and I think it is well deserved for what it potentially brings to the table. And also, when we look at India, I think it's a perfect place for AI to take roots and also to scale. Why do I say that? I mean, if you look at connectivity in India, I mean, it is ubiquitous, probably going down to the last sets of villages these days. The data center industry, which needs connectivity significantly, is growing at such a massive pace, which we all know. From about 800 or so, or about 1,000 megawatts, which it is today, it is expected to kind of almost double in the next couple of years. Then you start to look at the cloud infrastructure players who are coming up at the back of these data centers, and now combine that with the artificial intelligence layer, which will come on top. So I think it is, from an infra perspective, I think all the elements for it to scale for the telecom sector as well as for the other sectors are in place or coming in place. I think Ajay briefly touched upon the customer now being in the center. I think the key thing is about heavy duty, as they say, personalization. It's a very large network built for about 1 billion people overall in the country, but it eventually needs to be personalized as much as it can be. And this actually takes me back to one of the books I was reading called The Third Wave, written by an author called Alvin Toffler, who writes about future. And that one statement which stuck in my mind and which I think can become a reality, it starts to say that typically the marketing or the consumer companies have talked about segments, and each segment is of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people. From that, can the AI take us to a journey of millions of segments with a segment size of one, and we'll be able to service that? So I think that's the potential of this particular technology or this particular development. Having said that, I think on the telecom side, there are a lot more complexities of bringing AI to life. One of them is that this is a carrier-grade industry. A lot of mission-critical or absolutely daily critical applications go on it. On all of our devices, we are carrying our Aadhaar cards, our driving licenses, our payment credit card. The government is talking to us through the mobile phone more. So experimentation, I mean, it has to very quickly move out from experimentation and the POCs and those kind of scales to a real scale, which is highly reliable and scalable and so on. So I think that's where one of the big challenges or the opportunities of the industry are. And then start to combine this with the amount of diversity we have. I mean, the diversity of the consumer at one end, starting from different economic class, living in different parts of the country, but move to, I don't know how many type of devices you have to address. Then move to how many type of network infrastructure elements you have to address and how many combinations of those we have to address. I mean, you start to look at all of that and it starts to put the complexity of the network in front, and there, you start to look at back with that it has to scale, and it has to scale seamlessly and effortlessly. So then start to look at topics like there are different billing systems, there are different revenue assurance systems, there are different type of infrastructure, there is different kind of power availability in different parts of the world, etc. So combine all of that and you have an excellent mix of India being poised to say, if it can operate in India, which we have shown in different ways, if it can operate in India, it can probably operate anywhere else. So then a couple of business topics which always come to my mind. How cost effective is it going to be using AI? India is a market which is built on frugality, right? We make money on now about 200 rupees a subscriber, Ajay, right? Give or take? 208. Yeah, 208. So let's call it 200 round figure. We make money on 208 rupees a month subscriber price. So frugality is a given. So the AI has to travel that journey of being frugal, but not compromising on any of the topics which I touched above. Then I think the final point I would make is, to my knowledge around the AI, it's obviously very, very interesting and powerful, but it is still being used for very point applications. And it is still being used at more like the public data, but when it starts to use the enterprise data, when it starts to sort of use cross-functional, as they call, some of the technical words which are being used is called the large, not large language models, but the large application models, which is going from picking up the consumer and being able to go right back from the consumer to the call center, to the billing system, to the network, to whatever changes need to be made. So I think that journey is an important one when we are at the beginning phase of this journey. So very much excited as to where it takes us in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think it was really interesting to see that, the kind of coverage you gave, and especially your reference to the frugal part of India's story. And there are both sides to it, and also, especially the aspect of personalization of services at a large scale. So I think that's a very important aspect as well. Thank you. Now I introduce our next panelist, Koel Chakravarti, currently Chief Technology Officer at STL Global Services. Koel, with 26 years of industry experience, boasts a versatile background from Ericsson, Cisco, and Tata Communication. She led Cisco's pre-sales team for service providers in India and SAARC before joining STL. Her expertise spans wireless and wireline domains, driven by principles of excellence, ownership, execution, and people leadership. She has a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication. I invite Koel to make her initial remarks, please. Just press it once. Just press once. Yeah.
Is this working? Yeah, thanks, Shukdesh. Thanks to the panelists before me for an insightful beginning of the session. So I will echo a little bit with Sandeep. Those 26 years sounds very ancient, but this industry has been exciting and riveting at its best, and still we don't feel old. I still am learning every day, and we are speaking of AI, which is the latest and greatest. And I come from a generation where there was no NMS even. So I used to work for Tata Communication, the first ISP that came. We used to sell internet services as 15,000 rupees per month. And there was not even an NMS to see how the network is performing. So from there, the journey started from there. Then we got into NMS, then we got into automation, and then now we are talking of AI in terms of network planning and predictive maintenance, where moving from reactive to proactive. I think that's a big leap. Although we have come a long way, I think. Relating to what Shakti is saying in terms of becoming the biggest telecom industry in a span of 25 to 30 years, I think as a country that has been a tremendous achievement. From where there was no data till 1995, we did not have the concept of data in the country, and from there to wireline and mobile data, we have definitely come a long way. So why I started with that discussion is just to, I think many of us are from that generation where we have seen our journey and then very, very excited to take it forward. So in terms of, as we discussed, network operations, network planning, one of the key early areas where AI applicability has started, it's already happening in terms of getting into a more proactive mode from a reactive in terms of predicting faults and in terms of taking early action, both in terms of network and equipments. So that was definitely one of the early areas. Relating to Sandeep's personalization of services. So I'll just again take you back to 1997-98. So at that point of time, we did not have a concept of a call center or where the calls will land and there will be, no CRM, nothing. So we were engineers, we used to sit in NOC, we used to manage the routers, we used to manage the modems, and we also used to take customer calls. So it's like, no CLI, okay? So we don't know who is calling. If somebody is calling, we'll say, okay, sir, who are you, what is your problem? And we are completely playing in the dark. Apart from the name and how many hours they have, we don't know anything. So, the extreme step of non-personalized services from now in terms of when the customer is calling, you already know who that person is in terms of database, but what AI is bringing is what is the history, what is the call history, what is the tone, how the customer engages, and then how should be the customer agent, either the human agent or the bot should respond. So, and then how the machine learning is happening continuously to learn more and more of the same customer behavior. So that is in terms of service personalization. I think we are already there in India in terms of chatbots and quite a bit we are already doing, and what I understand from across the globe is we are pretty much ahead, at least in terms of customer response and personalization and use of AI. Of course, there is much more. Other area, as we discussed, is how do we work out on the business strategy side, what kind of data we are using to create our strategy for the future. And I think this is something that is applicable for all industries, not specifically to telecom. But from a telecom context, specifically in terms of the network is the key part of a telecom business. So the more insights you get from the network, more that more can be used in terms of your strategy formalization. In terms of the network strategy, where you need to go, what kind of services you need to sell to which customer, and both from B2C and B2B perspective. Then we briefly talked about why India is the right place, right? So I'd like to add to that, India is the right place for AI growth from multiple perspectives. First, our telecom infrastructure, as we said, it is the second highest, very, very robust telecom infrastructure, and coming from having worked in Ericsson for many, many years, having traveled to different countries, I have seen the difference in the network quality. So I used to be in Airtel Managed Services team, and we used to pride ourselves in the 2G network quality that we have in Delhi NCR versus one of the major networks across the globe, including US and Europe. So that's the network we have. Why it is, why it could be the driver? The AI is across industries, and connectivity will play a big part in the adoption overall. So we have a very robust connectivity. The basis is already there for us to build. And the second reason I say is our IT horsepower. And as we are saying, right, AI is a net zero game. We are starting from zero. Nobody has any advantage or any leverage. And it's, and we are doing well. We have a lot of startups, and it's a possibility that we become a leading player in this area. So combined with both these strengths, I think, India could be a great place where we also develop and also test and really make things happen. So, of course, I think there are other topics I'll talk about as we go forward in the panel discussion. Thank you, Shukti, over to you.
Thank you, Koel. I think you've covered a very important point, and I think all of us who've worked in the telecom sector are reminded of our days when, we used to have NMS, and then the OSS used to look like a big change. And from that time where engineers were taking calls from customers as well as, they were working on setting right the problems that were happening in the network operations. Also, there were scenarios where, a particular area, the tower will go down, and then there will be a person who will be routed, who will go there physically and check what is happening, what is wrong, and then there were issues like somebody had cut the cable. Those kind of days to the kind of discussion we are having today, where most of it is actually moving towards getting completely automated. Also, I think this important point that you touched, that movement from reactive to proactive network operations, I think that is very important, and also about India being the right place for innovation to happen, I guess, if I may take the liberty of saying so. Frugal innovation to thrive, India is the right place. With that, I come to my next panelist, and let me introduce Mr. Puneet Chopra, who's currently Telecom Chief Technical Officer at HPE. Puneet is a seasoned telecommunication professional with 3 decades of global experience across continents, and is renowned for his expertise in sales, bid management, and advanced technologies, including IP, MPLS, LT, 3G, SDN, NFV, and Telco Cloud. His leadership roles at Kyndryl, IBM, Ericsson, and Siemens Telecommunications reflect his proficiency in network infrastructure and cloud architecture. He's certified in various industry standards and holds degrees from prestigious institutions like IIT Delhi and IIM Kozhikode. Puneet is a distinguished leader in telecom sector. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Puneet to make his initial comments.
Thank you, Shujit, and thank you, dear panelists, for the enlightening sessions, and thank you everybody here for bearing to listen to me. So much has been already said about what exactly is the impact which we are actually envisaging from AI, but just to give my initial comments, there have been new technologies getting introduced in every era. So it's not that we don't have new technologies every 3 years we have actually seen. So the technology which impacts human lives, that is the technology called artificial intelligence, and this is something which has happened for the first time after internet was unveiled in the world. Otherwise, we have everything which is like cloud computing, service-oriented architecture, OSS, BSS, and dense, you can say, IP backbone network, containerized. Everything is something which impacts business but doesn't impact so much as human lives. So, when internet was introduced in 1995, I remember before that we used to send fax messages or faxes to our customers. So we've seen that era, so we have been actually waiting for a telephone line at our home for many years. And even when mobility came, it was a very rare dream to see internet on the mobile. So artificial intelligence is something which will really impact the way we live, and internet has also impacted the way we live. After 30 years, we have, in hindsight, if we try to see, we wouldn't have been able to see the kind of world we are living in, and that's what is going to happen in, I would say, less than 2 decades from now. As an example, autonomous cars. Who would really be thinking that cars can actually be driven by themselves by a LLM logic that is fed into it? Just for the sake of my understanding, I might be wrong, generative AI is LLM. So I hope that everybody is with me. So that's what I call as generative AI. And with images and pictures getting introduced into it, it will be having a next version. So ChatGPT, Mistral, Google Bard, Gemini, whatever you call it, Anthropic, all these are LLMs, and that is something which is yet to come into the telco world. What we've been seeing in telco as customer experience, insights, and behaviorals, patterns, that all have been there for a few years now, and I call it as advanced analytics, not really AI. When I talk about the AI applications, I would talk about chatbots, which are there, for example, in the Airtel Thanks app, a very nicely created one. And if we extend it towards the LLMs, than if it is integrated in 23 or 25 languages in India, so that everybody who doesn't understand English can actually use that Thanks app and be able to, use it much more effectively. That's actually integrating. And when we have NLP use cases integrated into it, which is natural language processing, that means a person who's very busy, like a busy executive, is getting ready or he's actually, doing something. And like we talk to Alexa, we can say that, okay, you pay my bills. Or, what exactly is the reason for the network traffic, which is actually, very, very flickering today. So likewise, it is able to do so, or what's the price of the stock, X stock, Y stock, what exactly is the, harvesting season, what is the type of rainfall that is expected. So all those things, once it is integrated into the Thanks app, so that is something which should be the vision, and I am sure that the telcos are actually thinking about it, because there are many tier ones who are actually taking that step forward. Now when we talk about these are actually customer-facing generative AI use cases. Now there are some network-facing use cases which are more to the network operations, as Ajay spoke about very beautifully, the slides which he presented. So the intent-driven orchestration and the closed loop, working with the AI/ML-enabled assurance. So that is something which currently is the tune of the hour, and service providers are going towards that, because like we have self-driven cars, similarly the aim of AI in telecom should be to have self-driven networks. Like Ajay nicely talked about a dark knock, that's what the networks of tomorrow, 20 years from now, will be. Unless and until somebody cuts a cable, and that's something nobody can stop. If there's a mason who's actually, making a road and trying to actually hit a tool there, so the cable will get cut. So that is something which has to repair. It will actually cause some kind of a downtime unless we have another cable from another route. But if that is not done, so the networks would be self-repairable, self-healing, and right now also that journey has already begun. It is not that it is right now not happening. But the only thing is that right now the networks which are currently operational, they are operational across 4 different genres of, or 4 different, generations of networks, multi-vendor networks. Some are supporting open protocols, some are still on proprietary protocols, and some of them are actually currently, partially virtualized, partially on physical appliance. Containerization is something which is going to happen in the next 10 years or so, and it's already started. In the core workloads it will happen, but when you talk about optical, IP, those are actually very different areas. So white box approach, where the SDN controller is actually sitting in the in the core, you can say, managing those, and then the marriage of the optical as well as the network layers. Those will make the complete marriage of these technologies possible, and then the AI logic via an LLM can be fed into it. So we have an example, 4 operators, Etisalat, SK Telecom, Singapore Telecom, and I think T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom. They are working on a LLM development for network, and they are actually distributing work among themselves, that okay, you take the radio, I'll take the network optical, or you take the mobile core, and I'm sure, I also know that Airtel is working on that. So the reason is that the kind of engineers which we have here, that is very, very different than what we get in the different world. And what is at the end of the day, do you know what is the main subjects on AI? They are probability and statistics. That's why they have maths and computing added into the curriculum. In the IITs now, maths and computing is something which is the first branch that actually gets sold, and even in the NITs. And these are new branches, and even the Indian Statistical Institute, that is actually having candidates picked up for data science. So these data scientists are going to be the key to write Python scripts. By the way, I'm getting old, so I don't write my Python scripts myself, but I go into ChatGPT, it helps me a lot, and then actually I can actually put, like a Lego block together. But these guys are actually smarter, they can write very good code, and what they need is domain experience. So the telcos can have a view of a development engine or a development, you can say, organization, which is able to, under the guidance of seasoned telco senior level people, have the data ingested into these LLMs, and that LLM can actually do wonders. We'll talk more about that. I hope that this was not very long.
Thank much, Puneet, for your great initial remarks, I would say. Yes, this is the next big wave since we had the internet wave, and India did, as a country, as a technical population of this country, we did make something out of that internet wave. But this is the wave we should capture and perhaps ride on. Also, you touched upon a couple of different aspects of understanding AI, and also the customer-facing and network-facing AI use cases. So now that we've had opening remarks from each of our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I would now be asking one odd question to each of the panelists. So Sandeep, I would want to start with you. You have a long experience of leading businesses and companies. As a business owner, as a business leader, how significant is AI for any business leader today, especially in the telecom sector? And in the boardrooms, is AI something that gets discussed? Is it something really given that importance? Your views on this, please.
Absolutely. I think if any organization is not discussing this, they probably are not reading enough. But yeah, so this is very much its discussion in the boardroom. And also it has moved from boardroom discussions into highly operational aspects, and how, from what it can do to how it can do what it can do. So I think it's really moving into that direction. When I talk about my own company today, I mean, we have extensive discussions around how we can use the AI to improve the network performance. How can we use the AI to bring down the energy consumption of the network, what we can do in terms of availability, what we can do in terms of the interplay of direct various items which we supply to topics like digital twins, etc. So a lot is being discussed both at the strategic level as well as at the operational level. But some of the other topics which, if we just step back, and Puneet briefly touched on it, the data scientists and how the courses are being redesigned given the new developments. I think one of the things which is generally talked a lot about in the boardrooms is the skill gap. I think the skill gap in the AI is something which we only anticipate right now, but it could be even bigger than what we anticipate. So I think there is a skill gap topic which very quickly will need to be filled. It has, whether it is the data scientists or coders and so on in that area, I think that's a massive topic, the skill gap. The second topic which always comes about is that the LLMs at the moment are by and large generic, if I use the word. Then how do you make them contextual and more specific to what our industry is, the telecom industry in this case? So how we can make all of those much more contextual, whether they need to be able to read the data which we have and then kind of put another wrapper on top of it. So that's the kind of discussion one has. The third topic, which is very, very critical, is around the data, which is around data governance, which is around the data integrity, which is around the data architecture, and which is around also the data privacy. So this system, the machine learning systems or the artificial intelligence system is going to learn what you're going to give it as input. And we have all heard about hallucinations and biases and all of those topics. So how do you govern your organizational or the enterprise data? We have all been into various meetings. In my career, I've been in more than few on either side of the table, sometimes explaining, sometimes asking an explanation. But how many times have we spent, 20 minutes of the first 30 trying to just reconcile the data? I'm sure it's How good is the data governance? I think that's something which we are discussing in the different forums. Then the other topic which always comes up is, I talked about the skill gap, I talked about, the data architecture and so on. Then the other topic which comes up is these are high energy consumption topics. In terms of, when I say energy consumption, it's in terms of kilowatts, high energy consumption topics. So how the impact of this is going to be, because the ESG is an important topic which all of the organizations have on top of their agenda. So what is it that we can do or which we should do? For example, in my own company today, we do the total cost of the total sort of money which the operators bring to us, about a third or more is purely for the consumption of the electricity or the diesel, right? So, and you start to think about it, and I won't throw numbers here because some of those numbers are not for the public consumption, but what I could just give you a thing is that probably this, our industry generates probably more than what a large power plant does, but it just generates it at 750,000 different places, small units, smaller number of units. So that's the kind of energy which we consume / generate. So I think that's another big topic which goes on. And then I touched upon already a few topics, which is around availability, which is about resilience, which is about accuracy, and frugality. I think from an industry perspective, I was still reading somewhere that when it comes to using some of these LLMs, the costs could be as much as 10 paisa per, what's it called, prompt or something, right? Prompt, which is not small. So you start to think of many of these topics, and then finally, I think what gets discussed is that I think there are two things, and this is my final comment, Shruti, I know I'm taking a long time, but we have to almost start, we have to sort of segregate this, that there is an immediate impact of AI which we can take advantage of. So it's almost like our organizations have to work at two different speeds. One is the immediate part which we can take advantage of, and second is a slightly long-term path in which we have to go across functions and do hardcore process transformations and put this whole facility which we have on the AI and Gen AI into how our organizations operate. So it's almost like two different speeds are needed, and therefore a very clear AI strategy and thought process. So quite a few things which are going on. So to give a single line answer to your question, yes, it is discussed quite heavily in the senior management and the boardrooms with all kinds of different perspectives.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you. It gave a good insight into what actually gets discussed at the top level inside the boardrooms, and you touched almost all important aspects. So coming to you, Ajay, you are the largest operator here in the country, and for you, the two key aspects are customer experience and then customer retention. I think that would be one of the primary focus areas of the entire management in the company. So in context of that, how do you see AI will help, or AI can be leveraged to create business models which are data driven?
I think it's a very apt query, question, from an operator standpoint. Customer experience is paramount from a retail perspective as any telecom operator, because we feel that if we have happy customers, they will grow with us, and our networks will continue to grow, and they will, bless us. What is important is how do we monitor the individual experiences of every customer interaction, every touch point where the customer touches us, every service which the customer consumes, whether it is the mobile data or whether it's the broadband data or for any other services which he consumes. We should be able to monitor every interaction. Based on the interaction of the services, we should be able to then identify whether he's having a good interaction or having a bad interaction, and what could be the possible reasons why these interactions have not been or are suboptimal. At Airtel, we are monitoring the experiences of each and every customer at every touch point, which helps us to identify and collate all this data into a larger ecosystem to be able to identify patterns. Because, if we have to solve issues, we have to identify, create patterns, and AI helps us to identify broader issues, narrow down from large segments of data into actionable items, and then take corrective actions. To sum it up, we could not have done without the ML part of it, helping us to collate this data, merge this data, identify patterns, and then take corrective actions.
Thank you, Ajay. Coming to you, Koel, when we talk about business strategy formulation and decision-making process, how do you see AI influencing that?
Yeah, I think, I'll relate back to my last points and also take from the fellow panelist. In terms of business planning, from a telco perspective, again, as we said, the main asset that a telco has is a network, and how we use insights that are being driven from the network to create our business plan. I think in terms of capacity planning, I think one of the major exercise that we do in a telecom operator is the annual operating plan, where we decide, in terms of what business, and coming from a network planning background, I think one of the main things that we need to decide is how much capex we need to invest where. And as we have AI, it is more in real time, more proactive. So that goes as an input in the strategy. There are the other aspects in terms of, again, coming back to, I think Sandeep had mentioned in the beginning in terms of personalization, again, coming back to that in terms of how do we reach out to, again, we have a big customer base, both B2C and B2B. How do we use basic AI tools like ChatGPT to create personalized messaging, maybe a personalized marketing campaign? Another interesting aspect I was thinking about is how does this insight get back into a new product design? So a mixture of customer pleasure or customer displeasure over a service correlated with the network data. And as you learn it over time, we might find gaps in our product strategy in terms of what new product, what new packages can be introduced to fulfill those set of customers. So that could be feeding into what new we will do this year. And one more point I'd like to add is the skill gap part that Sandeep brought out. I think going forward, I think skill gap has been something that telecom industry has addressed before as well. When we started the telecom growth in India, we definitely had a skill gap on the telecom side. I think the industry has contributed significantly in managing that to be where we are right now. From an AI perspective, especially in the telecom side, I think operators can take a leading role where operators can incubate, not only operators, I would say all the industry players in the AI telecom space, including operators and vendors and system integrators, software players. So they can do a little bit of more incubation where you reach out to the universities, and most of the companies have those kind of targeted programs, but more focused towards AI. That is, invest more in, and then I think Puneet had touched that build a, development engine within all of these. So that could be also something that could be driven from a business strategy perspective by use of AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Koel. Coming to you, Puneet. Puneet, with your exposure and experience, you are seeing the telcos, making use of Gen AI and LLMs in multiple ways. So, can you help us understand a little bit what are telcos doing currently? What is the current state of affairs? And if you can, you would like to share some use cases with us for that understanding.
Right, Shugil. So I touched on that a little bit, so let me extend from where I left. So, so I spoke about the, for example, the Thanks app being multilingual. That is one generative AI use case. And why I get that idea, because recently I heard Prime Minister Modi talking in Tamil Nadu, and he was talking over Bhashini, that's a METI project, and that's something which is currently coded in some 7 languages, including Tamil, and you speak, and it converts it into written text, and then it gets translated into the language which the listener selects. So you open the Bhashini app, you can download it and check what I'm saying, and then you speak through that. And the listener also listens through that on the mobile phone. So whatever he's getting, that LLM is actually coding it back into his language. So Modi ji is speaking in Hindi and he is listening in Tamil. Perfect. Perfect synchronization, so there is no language barrier. That is called natural language processing, NLP use case, and that is certainly, if you have to code it into 23, 25 different languages, it becomes more than a trillion parameter model, right? I'm not saying it will not cost money. It will certainly cost money. But then you also have a possibility of selling that infrastructure of something like multiple tens of thousands of GPUs to the different industries. When I see industries trying to actually think about it, like there are some, I'll not take names, there are some smart individuals who are building up AI capacity. I'm thinking that the smartest, I think, is my telco customers. Why are they not doing it? By the way, TCL has already started it, and I think that every telco should do it, because the way telco impacts lives is no other industry. I mean, they directly are in the hands of the customer, or the customer is in their hands. You can actually say it another way. Another thing, there are, I think, close to around, out of 500 million subscribers Airtel has, I think 40% would be 2G. Roughly 40%. So, of course, those guys are not very literate, our Kisan bhais and the people in the villages. So now let's say, so I heard the METI secretary Abhishek ji actually talking about in one of the sessions I attended, and he said what the government is doing, that Kisan who has a normal 2G phone, he will dial a number, and he will say, aaj dhan ka kya price hai, and then he will get that answer in a tone, So basically what is happening in, actually what is happening, he is speaking something via the radio signal, and via the signaling that goes to the mobile operator, somewhere actually it is connected on the LLM, and that LLM is converting it back into text. It is going and getting connected to the agriculture, you can say indices, and he's getting an answer there. So such things, if we are able to actually inculcate and rather, give them good price smartphones, because all of them are currently on 2G. So आप उन सबको smartphones दे दो, something like, cheap smartphones, 2,000, 2,500, so they should be able to speak to it, get answers. What type of soil should I actually, use? What is the monsoon that is going to be coming? Just an agriculture use case. Similarly, there are hundreds of use cases in other industries. When you talk about medical industry, there are many diseases in which you are not able to actually get the patient treatment, because the test which is actually taken, time which is taken for the test, those are actually much more than the time that actually the disease allows the patient to survive. I mean, he might die in something like 3-4 hours, and the test takes 5-6 hours. So AI, ML is something which is able to do that kind of work. So when we talk about telco, the telco infrastructure, it might be costing around, I would say, lot of money. I'm not saying it will be cheaper. I mean, that is one big, you can say, area which can be actually, looked into, and that will certainly also help the generative AI use cases on the network side. So currently, if let us say on the internet gateway a BGP link flaps, and it takes something like few hours to come back, I am on my Teams call actually talking to my team. I don't know what exactly is going to, or let's say my CEO is actually addressing the leadership team, and I don't get to know that something is actually going to happen, and altogether it goes. So if there is any predictive insights, because such a thing is happening in that Juniper or Cisco router is sitting on the gateway, they know that there is a code change that is required. So they actually will send an alert to all the all the individuals that kindly don't schedule any important, team calls or something like, town hall calls, big CO calls. So just an example. So those kind of insights is something which the network, which is having lot of data from every portion of the different, you can say, verticals, whether it is radio, it is optical, network, mobile, or even the carrier Ethernet network. So all those networks, the data which is there, if when it fed into the already few 100 billion parameter Llama model, or and Anthropic is on the cloud, but you can download from Hugging Face all these, open source models. And then you can harness it. जितना उसमें data feed करोगे उतने ज़्यादा उसके billions of parameters बढ़ते रहेंगे. And that is a work which actually is currently happening. Airtel is also doing it. And I am sure that 5 years, 6 years down the line, more generative AI use cases will come to our mind and, notice.
Thank you, Puneet. Sandeep, if I can come back to you with a question in terms of, sharing your experience and guidance towards the future leaders of telecom firms. People who are like one level below CEO today or two level below CEO who are looking at tomorrow leading organizations in the telecom industry. What would be your advice to such people in terms of building their skills on deep tech, especially artificial intelligence? What would be your guidance to leaders of tomorrow?
Actually, this would apply even to leaders of today, if you're saying I'm one of them. If I just go back maybe 3 months, when I started to hear about these words, especially after Gen AI, I said, what's going on here? And everybody is talking about it, so what do you start to do? I mean, this is, I think curiosity is very important here in my mind, but this is not a leadership session as such, but I think the most important thing really is that what telecom industry has told us is how we did things yesterday is not going to be the way we will do things tomorrow. I mean, it's as simple as that. Telecom was supposed to be voice. Today it is only about data. It used to be about, 2 spectrum bands, or at one point, 900 megahertz and then 1800 megahertz, to today number of spectrum bands. It used to be about, these spectrums can't be merged, there cannot be dynamic spectrum allocation, et cetera, et cetera. So all those topics have come over a period of time. So the people who have kind of kept pace is that, we have always sort of looked at that if we have this view that this is how it was done before, and that's how it will be done in the future, I think is a pretty wrong decision to take, I would say. So, I mean, telecom industry, whoever, all of us, I am assuming, are a part of it in this room, but that really has taught us that you need to be on, or all of us need to be on the learning curve practically every day. What was valid yesterday is not going to be valid tomorrow. But I could go on this topic, but I think clearly, to summarize this, curiosity is something which is on my mind all the time, and taking a plunge with no fear of failure is the other one. That, yep, something new is coming, we got to put it up there, it makes a lot of sense, and then see it through with a lot of commitment. I think those are a few things which are in my mind.
Thank you, Sandeep. Ajay, coming to you, there are these two areas. One is, as Sandeep had said earlier, about the large energy consumption for any telecom operator. And then there are the other area, which is like predictive fault management and ensuring that the network downtime is low. So is AI currently deployed in these areas? And how do you see that happening in future? So question to you.
I think a lot of the panelists did talk about the OpEx, which the operators have. Sandeep did talk about, 30 to 40% of the bills are because of the energy. And there is a lot of green initiatives within the operators itself that how do we create solutions, how do we run our networks much more optimally. AI is playing a very important role in terms of identifying how do we create solutions, where we could save power. There are initiatives like intelligent PSF features, which have got deployed in the network, where we, through the machine learning, we identify what are the patterns of traffic, where we could optimize how the network's power can be saved. Because we generate so much of data from networks, and which can intelligently be used to identify such patterns. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is identifying, products and solutions, which can be deployed such a way that, we are optimally running, there are servers, which are available, where we can identify what kind of cooling patterns are there, what kind of temperature profiles are there. All those things are analyzed to identify and to make sure that, we run the networks more optimally. That's in the data centers. Coming to the predictive part of it, how do we identify faults to happen? AI has already got deployed, and there are large segments of our network where we identify and predict faults. Prediction often runs in multiple segments, and what we do is, we identify faults, which are going to happen in the next 3 days, 7 days, and the actions need to happen within the 24 hours, the next 48 hours. There are two terminologies, which we use. One is the coverage, how much of the alarms you can predict, and second is the accuracy of the alarms. I'm happy to say that, in some of the areas, the accuracy can go as high as 70 to 80%, which means that predictions, what we're doing actually happen. Just that our initiative to fix those alarms, fix those issues proactively, help us to manage these networks to the level what the customer expects out of us. So all of these in some form and shape are there. Have we reached the end goal? Certainly not. More work needs to happen. More algorithms we are working on to refine these stuff. But then I think the journey has started.
Thank you, Ajay. Koil, if I may ask you, coming to two areas. One is about the cybersecurity part of it. So is AI something that is going to help us with this part, of this industry? And second, I would like to understand from you is, as Ajay just mentioned about data centers, is AI going to play any role or a significant role in data centers?
So I'll start with the data center part. So, very interestingly, the AI in data center has a completely different connotation depending on which side of the industry you're coming from. Many of you may be aware, but it was a learning for me, so I just want to share. So there are two aspects. One is the building of data centers to where this large language model processing will happen. So these data centers are not the today's data center because they require humongous amount of computing power. And there are specialized networking that needs to happen to make sure that the compute act as a cohesive unit, because there are big latency concerns there. So that is one aspect. If you are coming from the computing industry or a networking industry, when you talk AI in data centers, people are normally talking that. So, and the second aspect is how do we use AI to improve data center operation and planning? So that is another aspect. So here is again going back to what Ajay has mentioned. It is, data center and networks. It's pretty much similar in terms of understanding the faults and able to do a predictive, do a prediction and do a proactive maintenance kind of thing. So that is definitely on the active equipment part, on the server storage networking, very much similar to what we do on the network side of things. Another aspect is on the non-active equipment part in data center, which is also very, very important, which is the power and cooling. and where, the energy costs, as we discussed, humongous amount of energy cost, and what AI can do to manage those costs. Again, in terms of AI, what is the, we have a peak power, very basic telecom concept, right? We have average power, peak power, and minimum power, and these power cycles when there is a peak utilization, different parts of day. How do we optimize the power consumption in a more proactive way? Today also, even earlier we had those analysis, we had systems analyzing, but with AI, this is going to get enriched in terms of how do we use less power. And also, there are factors in terms of we may be connected to multiple utilities, and then what time of day or what week of day it is better to connect to which utility. So they are pretty advanced use cases that are being worked in. And similarly, also in terms of cooling, again, the cooling needs for the particular compute or storage will depend on definitely how much data it is driving. And based on that, we can reduce the cooling requirement or increasing the cooling requirement. And eventually, all this boils down to the energy cost, which we discussed is one of the highest costs that we have for managing the networks. So, and then also integration of AI application to the data center infrastructure management modules that are already present. So those are also happening, so that you have a unified dashboard and unified action. So these are few of the aspects from the data center side. On the cyber security, again, I think cyber security is an area which is very apt, and I know it's the applicability of AI is very high, because in terms of fraud detection, in terms of attack signatures, and in order to detect them, analyze them, and also an attack, for example, attack happening in one part of the network, and in terms of learning, as systems learn, typically, there are patterns in terms of how attack will happen, how it will move from one part of the network to other, understanding the pattern of attackers. So it makes mitigation of a cyber security potentially more effective. So these are the points I would like to add.
Thank you, Koel. Both these aspects are important, and thank you for comments on these. Puneet, if I may come to you and ask you if you can help us understand what kind of solutions are available today in terms of AI solutions specific to the telecom industry. Would you like to give us an overview of some of them?
So I have actually, I've listened to Ajay and Koel also, and thank you, Ajay sir. 3 to 7 days predictions and 48 hours of repair. I was not aware of this stats. This is beautiful. So I'll not repeat whatever has been said before. What I'll say is that in operations, there are two aspects. One is orchestration and the other is assurance. So when we talk about the AI and ML contribution in operations, it's about having different patterns of discovery in the assurance. So the fault manager and the performance management together, they are able to see the patterns which are currently happening in the network, and then they are able to build some kind of a trend or a database. Like in the old days when we never had these concepts of automation, something like 2 decades ago, we had a service desk. In that service desk, whatever calls used to come, and that level 2 engineer used to actually create a database that if this call happens, so this is what I should do. And that used to be expanded, and that was some kind of a manual database in RDBMS, whether Oracle or anything else. So now the same thing is actually done by this assurance engine. And what it additionally does, it has a closed loop orchestration connectivity to the orchestration. So the assurance via an inventory is able to connect to the intent-driven orchestration. And that's another part. The intent is something which you can code into a policy database. You can say that if, let us say, there are 2 ways of traffic that has to go from Delhi to Bombay, one via, let's say, Bhopal and the other via, let's say, Jaipur. So then just keep the Jaipur one 80% utilized. And once that is there, you shift the traffic, the new one to actually the one via Bhopal. Otherwise, this will be overloaded because they would have done some analysis. So this is just a crude example. So when you code this intent, so then what happens is that the orchestration is able to route the traffic to the Bhopal link, making sure that there is a balance. And with the technologies getting more cloud native as we go forward, this particular intent is going to be much more easier. So the closed loop works in such a way that there is a degradation of a service in one part of the network, and the assurance is able to sense that through the different touch and the pattern discovery which it has onto the network. Let's say a particular interface on the mobile output is actually dropping bits. So then via the closed loop connect, it goes back and tells the orchestration that this is something which might turn into an outage. Like Ajay sir said, like 3 to 7 days. So this starts happening in that much time before. What the orchestration does, it says, okay, no problem, I'll spin up a new user plane function. It spins up a new user plane function that it goes to the resource orchestrator, tells him, now you stitch your connectivity directly to this user plane function, repair the slice. Just an example. So these are things which the telcos are already doing, and Airtel is anyways, a leader in our country doing that, and many tier ones across the world are actually embarking on that journey. And this is advanced level, but I would say this has small language model within it. It self-learns, but it has a limitation. It doesn't have, the capability to go in every corner of the network because it is dependent on the type of adapters and the type of reach it is having on the network based on the type of devices. It is going through the middle layer, which is the EMS as we used to call it earlier. But when I talk about the large language model, the Gen AI models, which actually currently I spoke earlier, which is coding it into Python and making a trillion or you can say 2 to 3 trillion parameter model, that is something where you are actually collecting the stats and the data sets from each and every portion of the network, whether it is 2G, 3G, 4G, 3G is gone, 4G, 5G, and you are actually combining them together, make a probability distribution and then code it and make sure that this is how actually you're going to be taking decisions. So that's the next wave. It will take some time, but it will happen.
Thanks, Puneet. Thank you, panelists, for your comments. I now make this open to the audience for making comments or if there are any questions to the panelists. To begin with, may I invite Mr. Amit Gupta from Hughes System to make his comment or statement. You would want to come to the podium and make it, or you can have a mic there.
Thanks for the very nice discussion, and it's good to get a different perspective from an operator, from a software development company and a network equipment manufacturer and then infra company, and thanks for the good time. I think my perspective is telcos worldwide are at the forefront of our technology adoption from old days. I remember when there was not even a name of big data, telcos were churning the CDR records and the KPIs to find the patterns and everything. And similarly, in AI also, I do see the similar pattern that telcos will be the forefront on adoption. Some of the things we have covered about AI ops as one of our area, which is a low-hanging fruit for telcos, where I see the adoption will be much faster, and there are so many use cases which are there. At the same time, in a long term, as Puneet was touching about, I do see that our core networks will also become governed by AI. 3GPP is already talking about, the RIC infrastructure is already coming up, where multi-vendor equipments will follow the similar architecture for the data. KPIs and a lot of things will happen where even like our MIMO channel detection and the beam selection part and the federated learning will help on those use cases. And some of those use cases will also become evident in a short run of time as AI ops will get stabilized. I think some of the challenges which I foresee is in a multi-environment. I think especially, this is a comment to Puneet, and you may respond to this as a question also, that as AI will start taking a center stage, the focus will come on OEMs to come up with better KPIs and a much more controlled intent-driven KPIs, because they are actually which is fueling the AI engines in the background. So that is my question also now to you, that how do you see that paradigm of KPI definition, because KPIs has been there.
Almost you've given an answer to your question yourself. So yes, the OEMs have to actually, imbibe more open architecture, and specifically they have to be Kubernetes containerized architectures, because all these cloud native workloads are basically having open source at the core, and when you have open source at the core, so then you share more data. And when you share more data, you're more transparent and you are actually able to have a LLM control you more effectively. So that's what is actually something which will which will happen. I mean, the journey is on, and it will take some time. And the example which I gave about that, Kisan talking via 2G phone, I just realized that there is a strong business case. If, let us say, all the Kisans are given a 4G phone, smartphone, where they don't have to really interpret the language. They just have to actually, talk, and they will respond in speech. So you can retire the 2G architecture, infrastructure. All that is gone. That money which you save, you can actually invest in building a complete AI cloud at scale. So basically there would be new architectures and the new, you can say, like Yang models, all the equipments have to support. And I mean, these LLMs which I am talking about, they will go directly into the data, not really depending upon any middle layer. That will be the architecture of the future. Currently, we are talking about radio adapters, core adapters, going into the assurance and, using that. The architecture of tomorrow will be the LLMs controlling the network, and that's what will make it self-driven.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Rajiv Singhal. I work for the Amazon. Only 4 months old in Amazon, so believe me, after hearing all of you, I understand that we have aged. The company where I am working, average age is 32 years. So this particular thing which Sandeep was mentioning, that in last 3 months he started hearing, and 4 months ago when I joined, I started hearing Gen AI. Everyone talking about Gen AI. When I understand, we met in Barcelona recently, the CIO of Airtel, he told, I don't know any business case of Gen AI. Do you have any? So we have certainly, while we are talking about AI, and I understand we have already migrated to Gen AI. Ajay, one question to you. In customer experience or in network performance, what do you think as a Gen AI can increase the experience, or efficiency-wise it can enhance something, or it can improve something? Certainly, this is my first question. Second question, what do you think, in the interest of everyone, do you feel any future of Gen AI, or are you still waiting for some kind of use cases to be developed more to come back with the answer of Gen AI?
Okay, I think both the queries, Rajiv, are very apt. Everybody is looking at, I'll answer the second part of the question first, because that's the interesting part of it, because everybody is looking at Gen AI, what kind of use cases Gen AI has created, how operators are using Gen AI, for developing solutions and all. Now, Sandeep did talk about LLMs, LLMs becoming, the LLMs tailored for the telecom networks. Now, there are generic LLMs models which are available. They can be put to use for large number of use cases, where we have text to speech to text changeovers, understanding intent, understanding the voice behaviors, understanding, and we're also using it for a lot of image analytics. So those are the use cases, which are already there in the networks. But, we can certainly, expand the use cases, as we create telecom specific and, LLMs, which are more tailored to it. It's easier said than done. There's a large amount of data crunching, which is required to be done. And operators are very, very cagey. We can't put the data, in any cloud environment, public environment. So we are very mindful of, the data going, and mindful of the data privacy as well. So operators are working on to create their own LLMs as of now to be able to create those use cases. We've already deployed certain use cases in the networks. I would love to talk more about it in one-to-one interactions as to how we want using the use cases. But coming back to the query, which you had, how do experience improvements, certainly AI helps us to drive the experience. It does not by itself improve the experience, but you create tools which help you to drive that experience. I did talk about certain tools, which are already there. Self-optimizing networks is one such tool which helps us to quickly identify issues and fix the issues. There are use cases which we have deployed where we take satellite imagery, we digitize it, identify the patterns, identify what are the network elements in that area, identify what are the root causes, fix issues. All of this happens dynamically without a human intervention. And that happens every day, 24/7 in the networks. So there are many, many use cases which are there where AI, and now more so generative AI, is getting used in the networks.
Anyone else would like to ask any question?
Hi, good evening. My name is Sitaram. My question to Mr. Ajay Jain. See, particularly some voice calls or some WhatsApp calls are coming to our channels. These AI generated calls are coming directly, which is giving a more security issue to the public. So is there any such sort of mechanism to identify that it is a AI generated call that need not to be answered or that can be answered like that? This sort of any mechanism has been deployed. What is the security measures what we are taking care in, particularly in the AI generation area, especially to the end user level? Of course, we might have using n number of security measures at our core level and edge level, whatever it may be. But what about the end user level? This is most essential to the present public. Because nowadays we have seen many such cases. This particular AI generated call is initiated. This has a particular result has come. This is. Thank you.
I think you have raised a very important customer angst, I would say, in terms of these spurious calls, which happens in the network. Now, these calls get generated outside the network. I think there is a industry discussion which is happening as we speak about identification and taking measures to prevent these spurious calls. There's a lot of work which has already happened in terms of identification, but as solved everything? No. If you have solved, you would not have been, or all of us would not be experiencing the spurious calls, which is received every day. But the government is also seized of these issues, and it's a constant. There is a lot of industry discussion happening to evolve a common process by which we are able to take the actions around it.
Thank you. One last comment, please.
In fact, I had two. I'll ask one simple one. So I really appreciate the insights you've seen across network optimization, consumer experiences, operational efficiency. So it's to the whole panel. So what is the single largest disruption do you see the AI will create, which will leave behind a legacy in the telecom sector with the use of any of the AI technologies?
It's a very tough question. And if, by the looks of it, obviously I've spent a lot of time in the industry, and all the predictions which I've made as what would be the final use case have turned out to be wrong. So I'll just stay away from making any of such predictions as to what could be the killer use case legacy. On a light note again, when I joined the industry, if you were to look at some of the outcomes which I had written as to who would be the successful operators 10 years from then, you would be thinking, was this guy smoking something which he shouldn't have been? So I would desist. Sorry.
So what I see is self-running network. Like currently what Ajay mentioned, we have self-organizing network that's mainly on the radio side, right? Ideally, I don't think anything of that sort is happening in the core, or it's not happening something in the optical end of the network.
We will talk about
it. Okay. So basically like Ajay mentioned about the dark knock, that lights are off. You don't need to actually make people sit there to see the screen and to actually do the troubleshooting. Automatically everything is happening. So that's why the knock is dark. This will be extended to every portion of the network. The only place where humans will be required would be for RMA repair and replacement, for going and setting up a new site where you need to give power, you need to connect cables. If anything is failing, you need to go and replace it. Or if anything is requiring, you can say, code change a major code change that has to be actually, you can't just leave it on AI machine. You can actually decide that what AI will do, but you will be actually monitoring that project. But majority of the work you would actually have AI do it because it will do fantastically fine. There would be no code errors. And you just need to make sure that what you are asking the AI engine to do is actually, the thing which will be more long for the humans to do, and it is more error prone. So I would say majorly it will be in operations. And that's going to be the killer. Operations and design. Design is very important. when the network is expanded, it gets very tedious to decide how to actually design the network, especially on the optical and the network layer. I mean, there are like so different protocols coming in, IETF and the optical forums. They are actually coming up with new protocols, and let's say in 1 year you are going to be having new equipment that is going to be supporting it, and let's say there is a merger happening, right? Like Idea and Vodafone happened. So then what do? So there's a lot of code and the design changes that need to be done to merge the networks together, and that's the experience I gained there, while they were actually merging, and that I still relish was the most technology intensive experience I got. It's much more higher than actually building a new network. It's like, renovating your house. It's always tougher, right?
Let me take a shot at, because this is a very, very complex question, but I think what I foresee is, and what we all foresee is, the interaction of humans will become more seamless with machines, Because as the generative AI things will become more evolved, you will interact more with machines, and the interaction will seamlessly migrate from machines to humans, and you will not seamlessly know as to what's happening, Because that's where the intelligent chatbot, and that's where a lot of the LLMs are being put to use. That how do we make them, give out and talk to you much more seamlessly? So that's a tighter integration which is going to happen, and that probably you will start to see very often now.
No, I can't resist.
Yeah, if I
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the transformative power of this technology is such that to give it a view which is, what legacy or what it could do, I think the way I look at it is, where do we want as industry leaders want to make an impact, or how do we want to use it to make an impact? And some of the things which come to my mind is that the availability of all kinds of resources of the country or the government, the way it wants it to get to the people, I think that is one big topic which this can achieve, and which means that lifting the overall broad economy, which would mean that lifting narrowing the digital divide, which could also mean that while the physical infrastructure is coming into play, the telecom infrastructure powered by AI is bridging the gap, as we have seen in the past. So it really is many ways up to us to think about that, what is it that we want it to deliver. And all of this, what we just described by Puneet or Ajay, I think are massive enablers. But telecom combined with AI can bring that sustainable long-term difference in terms of how the population of this country kind of lifts itself up to the next levels. Yeah.
Okay, I hope you got your answer. I was tempted to add my 2 cents to it because, at a very basic level, if you look at the human brain, it's a very potent force. And if you read medical journals, you will find that most of the human beings use only a very small amount of the human brain. My own perspective on this is that, around 30 years that I've worked across 3-4 industries, across 9 different job profiles, I have seen that most of the jobs are 70 to 80% boring. I started from an engineer and I ended up a CEO before I came here. And I find that AI will free human beings from mundane tasks and routine things, which a lot of human resource around the world is currently engaged into.
And that would lead to human beings becoming capable or able to handle this planet and the environment maybe in a much better fashion than the clumsy manner in which we've handled it. So these are my 2 cents on this. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, 2 more. 2 more. You can have. Hi, Deepak.
Deepak from Tata Communications. My question is to Sandeep Girotra ji. Actually, I saw that a lot of energy usage is there in running of telecom towers, as you said, that 30 to 40% of energy consumption. So there can be very interesting use cases of AI. They are like you use a combination of utilities like power, battery and grid, as well as renewable energy resources. And of course now the solar, etc. is there. So I'm just hoping that you will be able to exploit the AI credentials there, and it will not be you will be having experiencing good ROI in case you are using this use of AI, because this a lot of computing is needed there, like when you want to use DG, when you want to use the batteries, and whether they are fully charged or not, at what potential batteries to be used to maximize the battery life, how you have to go forward. So I would like to know your comments about that.
Yeah, so you're right that the 3 sources of energy which you described, grid, batteries, and then maybe diesel generators, and maybe alternates, green sources like solar, etc. So but there is absolutely no doubt in our mind, and this is something which we continuously keep on doing to understand, and this in combination with what our operators are doing in addition activities like sensing the traffic on the network, and then increasing the capacity or the number of units which are switched on and off, and then coming to us in terms of the 3 or 4 sources, how can they be best optimized? So we do tend to use a lot of today's environment. We tend to use a lot of analytics, and I think this was the point which was made. And AI just takes that analytics to the next level in terms of understanding the grid, understanding that if the diesel generator is supposed to be consuming so many, first of all, how many run hours it needs to have. Second is the consumption per hour, and those kind of statistics, and combine that with some of the predictive topics as to, does it need replacement, does it need repair, does it need refurbishment, does it need any other kind of functionality. So I think it is going to be a very important part of the way we run our journey in terms of reducing at an industry level the impact of emissions and the consumption. Yeah.
I hope the counterparts like the customers, your customers, are not charging for the capex you are putting into that. Just on a lighter note.
Okay. Thank you. One last question, Deepika.
Hello everyone, I'm Deepika from CII. My question is, what advice will you give for telco startups?
Telco startups. Well, I would say that there's a lot of scope in India when it comes to Gen AI LLMs, so I'm not really talking about specifically telco startups, but recently you would have seen that Bhavesh Agarwal of Ola is actually talking about Gurugram. That's actually going to be the first LLM which India will produce in multiple different languages. Although Hanuman is one which is already produced and launched with 400 billion parameters, and what Ola is doing is something similar to that, but he will be actually having more use cases related to autonomous driving and all, which will be actually powering up the Ola scooters and all. So similarly, when we talk about telco startups in AI, the major thing actually is that pick up a portion of the network, which you think is actually more congested and try to actually build a LLM use case to actually manage it. Now, it's easier said than done, like Ajay also said. I mean, I can make a statement here and I can go home, but no, that doesn't mean that a startup person who wants to open a startup, he will be actually getting great ideas out of it. You know, he has to really have a vision, he has to have the capital, he has to really recruit better people. He must first of all understand the pain that it is going to be solving, whether it is worth it, who will it sell it to. He can make a startup, but who will it sell it to? You know, so he'll go and sell it to likes of Airtel and Vodafone, right? So why should they buy it? And can they do it cheaper than what exactly he wants to sell it to? So all those things, you know. So.
So I'll have just two comments here. One is, depending on what stage the startup is. I mean, is it really at the very initial stages? You know, probably AI has a limited role to play at that point of time. But what I would say is that, as it is said that in any particular startup, how to scale has to be a key part of your initial business plan. While you are doing the product ideas and topics like that. Now I would add AI to it, that once you're doing your product ideas and doing protos and doing POCs, etc., like scaling has to be a part of your key business plan. AI similarly has to be a part of your key business plan as to when you start to scale, or before, how does AI come into the picture. So I would say very critical for startups in general, but for telecom in specific, because the moment one will get into the telecom business, the first thing which will hit is the complexity, the diversity, and the scale, and the frugality on top. So I think those 3-4 things would have to be built in on day one in terms of how you think about your business models and revenue streams and such like topics. Yeah.
So I think AI is something that needs to be an integral part of any development going forward. I think irrespective of telco, because most of the older companies are struggling to adapt to AI because they have a lot of legacy code. First came the virtualization, now containerization, and then the AI. They are having to build a layer. So I think for startups, the basic thing is whatever they are building, they start with the AI thinking from the very beginning. I think that is very critical. Whether whatever use case they are building, they want to build a telecom software, they want to build a telecom equipment, it has to be AI native. I think that is where the thinking should go.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, panelists. I think just to summarize quickly in the interest of time, we started with a presentation by Mr. Ajay Jain, who gave us a good overview of AI in different aspects of networks and customer experience. Sandeep gave us good insights into leadership and business leaders' perspectives on different aspects of AI. Koel gave us a good overview in terms of cybersecurity, data centers, the change, the evolution of network operations and management and automation, and AI now. And Puneet gave us a good overview of multiple AI solutions and how different AI models do work. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to a closure of this session. I hand over back to Dipanita to take this ceremony to closure.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for moderating the session, and thank you to our esteemed speakers for enlightening us with your thoughts. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present a memento to all our eminent speakers. I'd request Dr. Rao to kindly present the memento to Mr. Sandeep Girotra. Mr. Ajay Jain. Koel Chakrabarti. Mr. Puneet Chopra. Now, I would request Mr. Sandeep Girotra to kindly present the memento to Dr. Sukhdeep Singh Rao. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we have come to end of this roundtable discussion. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our panelists for their valuable insights and to our audience for their active participations. Now, I would request everyone to join for high tea. Thank you.
पुनीत जी ने काफी ज्ञान दे दिया पूरा HP
AWS में हो या Amazon?
काम आजकल Amazon के लिए कर रहे हैं साल तो Amazon नहीं ला रहा है AWS की तो कुछ है ये देखो के सामने ज्यादा बात नहीं करते मैंने ध्यान नहीं दिया कमेंट करते हुए बस
What is in the market?
हमारी तुम्हारी हम रिटायर हो जाएंगे बिल्कुल हम रिटायर हो जाएंगे